Hey guys, I promised that I would make a dream journal today. Well, I've been promising to make one a while back and I just haven't got to it. I'm sorry, I have been extremely busy. So let me tell you that when we were little kids, our household was not a good household. It was always temperamental, anger between the parents, lack of food, and stuff like that. So we walked in two realms, and it's hard for some of you who have experienced this. I guess I should call this, instead of dream journals, campfire stories, right? Because it's basically stories you tell around a campfire, even though they were real and they happened to my family. But I mean, there were things that went on in our household that you couldn't determine if it was what it just was so eerie. It was, we walked in the supernatural a lot in that household, and I find that a lot of households that have experienced anger or trauma at a young age, the loss of that innocence in your mind and in your heart is what causes you to be in touch with like the spirit realm, and it's not good. I mean, we battle demons, we battle whatever during those years. And so as a little girl, I didn't like to sleep. I hated the dark. The dark was scary. It was, just thick. It was suffocating, and I can't explain to you why I felt that the dark was so suffocating, but it was. It felt like it was suffocating me, and it wanted to suffocate me. So anyway, as a young girl, I taught myself not to enter REM. REM, sorry. I'm trying to get comfortable here. I taught myself not to enter REM, which it's not a good thing not to enter REM, because you need REM sleep. Your body pays the toll and the price when you don't enter that. But I didn't have anywhere safe that I felt that I could be to enter that sleep. So I taught myself as a young child how to wake myself out of a deep sleep, and how to keep one part of my foot wiggling back and forth, so that way I could have an attachment to this normal world that I considered normal, to keep me awake so I wouldn't dream, because I didn't want to dream, because at that time things were after me in my dream. And even so, we experienced stuff this just could not be explained. Like I said, a flash, that was out of the corner of your eye real fast that you saw. There were things that happened in that house that even our animals would act out, and they would get scared, and be cats would be staring off somewhere, and all of a sudden they'd arch their backs and they'd hiss in a corner, and there's nothing there. So I lived in this household, and it was not one that was extremely pleasant, but you grew up there. You lived, and you had to do what you had to do just to get out of it. And so, what I mean is, by walking forward, trying to grow up as quick as you can, trying to get out of that place. And so, as a little girl, I hated nighttime. I despised it with a passion. But I go into these dreams. Where, like, there was death chasing me. It was like skeletons, coming after me. One was funny now that I think about it, because he was like in a cowboy vest with a sheriff's badge, and he had boots and his little guns at his hips. And normally that would be funny, but as a child, 5, 6 years old, and you don't know what's going on or why, it terrifies you. And so I taught myself to wiggle my foot so that I could have some connection to the waking world, so that I wouldn't be able to drift off, because I just was not safe. There was no safe area that you could be in that house to dream. It just never was safe. And whether it was waking life and fighting and abuse, or whether it was the spirit realm, that the darkness and the demons of whatever household carried or attached was still there on you. And so I definitely could not sleep. And my mother one day we had company, and it was her sister, and she told me that her sister was going to help me to be able to get some sleep. And of course, as a little girl, it kind of scared me, but at the same time, it was everything to me because I wanted to sleep. I just didn't know what it was. And so she taught me to sing Jesus Loves Me. And so when I sang Jesus Loves Me, when those dreams came, they would end really quickly, and I wish it would have stayed that way permanently. But as I got older, the forces got harder and darker to get rid of. And I know as a little girl, I also had dreams that would come to pass. So, for instance, I had it ever since I was a little one. One night, my mother had made a cake, and it was very important because we didn't have the money for cake. And this was a birthday cake for my sister, I believe it was. And so her birthday was the next day. But my mother was very angry the next day. And because somebody had eaten the cake, the frosting off from the cake, and of course, nobody was going to admit to who it was. Was it me? No. Honestly, it wasn't. I just didn't want to do that for some odd reason back then. But that night I had a dream, and I dreamt that my brother was the one in the kitchen at night eating the icing off the cake. And so I told my mother, I said it was my brother who did it. I said I dreamed that he did it. And she didn't want to believe me at first, and because it's hard to have your daughter telling you that you're dreaming these things. And so my brother, that night, I guess it turned out, we found out he was sleepwalking when he was doing these things. And so he had a dream that he was eating cake, and that he could taste the frosting. And so it was so weird because then the next night he was back out there, and my mother had caught him this time in the act, and he was eating the frosting in his sleep, and he hadn't done it on purpose. He was just sleepwalking. And so then another time, my mother's wedding ring, somebody had messed around with it. She kept it at the sink. She'd take it off and she did dishes, and all of a sudden it came up missing. And so that night I had a dream because my brother was trying to blame my sister this time about it. And that night I had a dream that my brother did it, and that he was messing around with it, but he had not meant to drop it down the sink, and he had done that. And see, when it had happened, my mother was so upset and so mad because there was hardly any money, but yet she had bought her own wedding ring, which tells you how hard our life was. She had sold her property in Michigan to buy her own wedding ring because I guess my dad just didn't know what he was doing. But anyway, so her ring wound up down the sink, and she was mad, and then she was gonna punish all of us because it was corporal discipline. And that night I had a dream my brother did it, but it was an accident. So I told my mother that my brother had done it, but it was an accident, and she questioned him, and sure enough, he admitted to being the one to do it. I had this at a young age, but then again, I had cancer at 11, but you're talking about 5 or 6 years old that are having these dreams. And so an oddball experience that didn't make sense to me was we were made to take naps at a young age. And so my parents, they would discipline us if we didn't lay down at least and be still for like 30 minutes to an hour. And so I'm on the top bunk, and how it worked was in our trailer, us 3 kids shared a room for a little bit. And so I had the top bunk bed, and I'm laying on the back, on my back as a little girl, and I don't want to sleep. I hate sleeping. Sleeping is so uncomfortable because it's not comfortable. It's never comfortable there. And so I'm sitting there not wanting to go to sleep, and it's like I go to close my eyes and I can't sleep. And finally I drifted off, and all of a sudden my legs started to get hot. Now, I don't remember what leg it was, but it started to get hot in this one area above my knee. And all of a sudden there was this round red spot that appeared on one of my legs. And it got hot in my dream. And then I kept watching, and as I watched, the round circle that had started forming on my leg started shifting and started getting up and running around until it was running so fast it finally slowed down as it took shape. And it was like, it looked like this little red man that was about like, probably back then, because I was a little girl, I'm gonna say it was about 1 foot to 2 feet tall. And he was just completely red. He had like a little red gnome hat, a little red jacket. Now, my family never encouraged those things because to them that was demonic. You didn't, listen to those things. And so, he's looking at me. He's watching me on my leg, and I'm like, what is this? I was scared because I'm like, a little red man is on my leg. And so all of a sudden he looked at me and he goes, if you ever need me, you can call for me. If you ever need anything, you can call for me. And I was like, I don't know who you are. And so I was scared because I was a little girl. And so he got up and he ran back in a circle. And he started running so fast, he eventually faded. But as I woke up, that place had gotten hot again. And as I woke up, I was still on my back sleeping. I must have drifted off for like maybe 20 minutes. That spot, there was a round red circle, as God is my witness, on my leg. And I want to say it was my right leg, but a perfect round circle from where he was. And this was after I woke up. It was still there. And so we had a lot of unique experiences. And then the one thing that made me start seeking the Lord was the dreams started becoming more intense. They started like making me want to seek him and find out about God, because I didn't really know anything about the Lord. And so at that time, I'm sitting there trying to think, and I'm like, okay, so who is this? And so I was shown a pair of balances. And I want to say the way they faced in my dream, they were tilted. The one side that was up was the right side. The left side was down. And I heard a voice say, you were weighed and found wanting. And so there's nothing like hearing that. You're weighed and you're found wanting. I mean, that kind of scared me because I didn't understand that. I knew it wasn't good that I was weighed and found wanting. And so I started seeking the Lord. And then at 7 years old, I had accepted the Lord. And then that night, I had this dream that started off all my dreams. I'll only tell you the next two. So the dream that started off all my other dreams was I was under the clothesline with my mother, handing her clothes out of the laundry basket, watching her hang them up on the clothesline. Favorite moments of mine there for a minute. And then all of a sudden, I hear the roaring of jets. It's like when they break the sonic boom. But it was loud. It shook the ground. It rattled the windows. And it shook like, it felt like it shook the whole world the way it shook. And then I look up. There's a red cross going from one end of the sky to the other. The clouds had parted. And it was nothing but like a red cross stretching all the way across the sky. Well, I thought, that's interesting. As a little girl, I didn't know what to make out of that dream. Well, then the next night, I had another dream. I had a dream where I was showed, I think, a part of my purpose. I just don't understand everything in it. So that dream that I had that night, and I'm 7 still at this age, and I'm in a swamp. This is the weirdest thing, because I didn't watch a lot of TV. Back then we had one or two channels because we couldn't afford cable, and so I didn't really get to watch a lot of TV other than Hee Haw and stuff like that. But in this dream, it's midnight. I know it's dark. It's so dark you can see the outline because the moon is full. And there's a few clouds drifting like across it, but not enough to where you couldn't see it casting shadows. And I was in a swamp, but like it was a good sized swamp, like kind of like an ocean looking type swamp, that it had all that space. Like as you looked across, you could see the moonlight reflecting off the water, but yet there were bushes in it. There were all kinds of, like, so it's really swampy. You just see the shadows, and I'm paddling in this canoe, and I am looking, and all of a sudden there's this man lying on the floor in my canoe, and his face was huge. It was growing it was in a proportion to his body. Like it was largely, I guess I should say, out of proportion. It wasn't lined up. His face was just growing, and somehow I knew that he needed to get help. And so there was marsh in this waters, which remind me of how it was the swamp. And so as I'm rowing and rowing, I knew time was short and that I had to do everything in my power to help this guy. I didn't even know who he was. I never recognized him. Well, then there's this hospital, this old hospital. Like it looked like it was a hospital during the war, maybe like World War I, like an infirmary type of hospital. And all of a sudden, I mean, there are no lights on it. It basically looks like a shell of itself. In other words, it definitely looked like just remains, like ruins, but yet the building was still standing, just vacated. And so I'm in a hurry to get him up these steps and into this hospital, and I just knew, I was like, he's got to have help. It may be empty, but maybe not. And so I get him inside somehow. I didn't see how I did it, but I got him inside, and he even had a room. And so all of a sudden, I'm sitting there, and we're in this room, and all of a sudden we're on stage. Like it's no longer a room. Like I can see chairs out in the audience, and because there's one bright spotlight in the room and it's shining on him, and I'm looking past, and I could hear them whispering, but there was nobody in the chairs. And this is what I called like the dark audience, the black audience. Like they were there, but they weren't. You could hear them whispering. And I was trying to witness for the Lord. Mind you, in real life, I had just accepted him, so I didn't understand all of this yet. And so in my dream, I'm trying to witness to him about salvation and accepting Christ as his Savior. And when I start pulling on him, like spiritually speaking, for his soul to come toward me, the audience grows really quiet. Really quiet. And then all of a sudden the spotlight shines on and pops off over to the one corner, and I go to look over there because then there's a pole, and his soul starts going this way away from me. And all of a sudden I'm looking, and in the corner, I believe it was Death I was looking at, because he was in the shape of a skull, the skeleton, the Grim Reaper, but not with a cape. He had a crown on, a 3-tier crown, and he was sitting on a throne chair. It was a very dark throne chair, and he held a scepter in his hand of a skull. And it was so weird because like its eyes would light up red whenever it was his turn, I guess, to pull on this guy's soul. And this thing was cloaked in like dark purple, like it had a dark purple cast, the cloak on it. It was around its neck, and the tier, it had 3 tiers, The bottom tier was like a skull and crossbones with a round bone, and it went around that way. The second one was where there were like hieroglyphics like on the Egyptian walls, but it was skeletons like fighting each other with swords and things that went around the second tier. And the third tier, I'm trying to remember, I want to say it was like the first tier. It was the skull and crossbones that went around there with the little bone circles around that. And of course, on the top of his crown, it was like that dark purple cloak colored in the top of his crown. So, and this thing was ugly. He had the dark eyes, like you couldn't really see in his eyes, like they were just gaping holes, but yet you could tell that he had dark eyes, and everything was dark about him. And so although there was like this eerie, ugly, supernatural colored light about him, it was just creepy. But every time that he started pulling on this guy's soul and started winning it, the audience would cheer like crazy. They would whisper, they would cheer. But then as I was pulling and it came back toward me, it would get quiet. And there was a tug of war going back and forth. And that is where it ended. But anyway, thank you for joining my campfire stories, I guess I'm going to call them. But these are actual dreams that I had, and things that we've experienced right along with these dreams, which is just kind of nuts. But after a while, my dreams started becoming more prophetic, the Lord. And as much as I had the dreams of prophecy with the Lord, I also was attacked by darkness too. So I thank you for your time right now. You guys have a good evening, and I will try to get back with some of the dreams that I've had after that as a little kid. They're sparse. I did have them documented at one point, but yeah, all my stuff is packed right now. So I'm going to give you what I can remember having. But y'all have a good night.